We continue the Shir in Sichos Haran, sayings of Rabbi Arizal, Sif Kuf Mem Test that we've been on for the past number of Shurim. This paragraph 149 deals with the story of the Zion Bettlers. The last story is Tikuney Zohar. We have completed telling that story, and now to get back to Rav Nosson's describing the story behind the story. What transpired when Rabbi Arizal told this story, under what conditions he told this story, and the items that led up to his relating this story. Rosenfeld tells us that this story was not told at one sitting. It wasn't told at one time. It took a number of days Rabbi Arizal to complete the story. Each time, what led up to the telling of that part of the story was something that happened, or some kind of a discussion that dealt with an item that was related to the continuation of the story. This is what led Rabbi Arizal to continue of this story. It all began on Erev Shabbos Kodesh on a Friday night, Rabbi Arizal's home, approximately 7 months before Rabbi Arizal's Histalkus, which in itself is a hint at the depth and holiness of the story, because the closer Rabbi Arizal came to Histalkus, that's how much greater Rabbi Arizal was. Remember, Rabbi Arizal said that in his later years he could accomplish in 15 minutes what it took him a whole lifetime to accomplish till then. So at that time, imagine what Rabbi Arizal's Madrega was then. It's difficult to conceive, to even think of it, so awesome. It was then that Rabbi Arizal told this story. At that moment, Rabbi Arizal's home at the table, he was mention made of a letter that Rav Nosson had written to a friend of his. Nosson mentioned in this letter the words, as a good Breslover does, to be b'simcha. Always be b'simcha. Rabbi Arizal reflected on this for a moment, and he said to those around him, Rav Nosson was not there at the time. He said to those around him, what do you know about how to be b'simcha in the middle of a sadness, in the middle of a dejection? The person feels in a very sad frame of mind. How to become the simcha right in the middle of that sad frame of mind, in the middle of a sad moment. Then he said, I'll tell you how to be the simcha. And then he began this story. He began the story. He told the beginning of the story. You recall that part of the story dealing with the prince who took over the kingdom during his father's lifetime. That part of the story that was not completed. And then he also told the story of the beginning of the part of the 7 bettlers. He completed the first day. The bettler of the first day, the blind bettler, and how the blind bettler related his greatness, how he lived a special long life compared to the stories of the wise men. Each one told about his length of life. He could recall, his memory could recall that far back. Now the blind bettler showed his superiority over them. That was the end of the first day. That's as far as Rabbi Arizal told that night. On Tuesday, Rabbi Nachman, Noson's closest chaver, came and told Rabbi Nachman this story that Rabbi Arizal told, this part of the story, which in itself is a full story. Nosson writes that he was astounded, completely astounded, amazed at what he heard. Because though he had heard to the Rabbi Arizal many discussions before, many deep shiurim, many stories also, Tikuney Zohar, Nosson was amazed and understood this was far superior and superseded anything he'd ever heard before. He was so taken aback by this, he couldn't wait to both speak to the Rabbi Arizal about this part of the story, and also, anxiously, to hear the rest of the story. The next morning, on Wednesday morning, Nosson came to Rabbi Arizal's home. He spoke to Rabbi Arizal, and Rabbi Arizal told him, reviewed with him, the discussions about the wise men, about their memory, which each one recalled. He also clarified certain points. The story we have now is in perfect detail. The Arizal got this from the Arizal himself. He made clear those points, the exact order of these wise men who spoke about their memory. The Arizal also told the Arizal about the words of the blind bettler, who said, I recall whatever you recall. I can recall way back to the time when, before the fruit even came to the tree, the color, the taste, the smell of the fruit, so forth, even before the birth of the child, before the child was even formed, before the child was even conceived. I recall way back there. I also recall nothing. I recall nothing means when there was absolutely nothing. To be able to recall that was before time. This was the power of this blind bettler. This will explain to the Arizal. Imagine that zechus to be able to hear that. And so, in the middle of this discussion, the Arizal was very anxious to hear further. Suddenly, the Arizal's Mishores by Kodesh, the one who served the Arizal personally, came. He set the table for the Arizal to eat. The Arizal was forced to leave temporarily while the Arizal ate. These short phrases are important for us to know exactly how the relationship at that time was, what the derech was. The Arizal had to eat. We now know definitely from Arizal's words, but it was not respectful for anyone to be present. The Arizal walked out at the time, even though it would seem that to be present there, what damage, what harm could it do? Yet it was customary then to walk out. Though, as we know that on Friday night, the main time for the Arizal's shiurim, Friday night and Shabbos, they ate together at the table. During the week, apparently, it was the rule that he would eat by himself after he ate, a very small amount naturally, what we would call a tiny snack. After the Arizal ate that, he lay down for a short nap. Again, of course, the Arizal's nap was the same type of nap as the Ariyat Kodesh would take. The Arizal went to visit the heavens, the yeshivas in heaven, and to receive the order of the lights of the Torah that is found and is studied in heaven. After this short nap, Arizal re-entered. He came back, and again he continued his discussion with Arizal. He said to Arizal, told him what a pity how the whole world is so filled with daigas, with different types of worries, concerns, a lack of a happy frame of mind. So Arizal said, that's exactly the part of the story we're up to. The world is filled with daigas. They don't live a good life. That's the story of the second bettler. So Arizal told the story of the second bettler who lived the good life, a very good life. That was on that Wednesday. So Arizal heard this personally, the story of the second bettler. Then, on Friday night, the following Friday night, Arizal told the story of the third and fourth bettler. Third is the bettler who had difficulty in speech, dumb, could not speak. And the fourth one was the one whose throat was out of joint, crooked throat. Of course, as we see in the story, these were actually spiritual talents. No one had a better power of speech than the third bettler. No one's throat was more perfect than the fourth bettler. Just that these were seeming defects. The bettlers proved that they were really very great tzaddikim, the greatest tzaddikim, and these were signs of their greatness, their holiness. And of course, again, we make note again and again that these bettlers were really one person. The tzaddik emes, all seven qualities of the tzaddik emes, and the only one who could know about this is the person himself, the bettler himself, the tzaddik emes himself. So therefore, the one that told this story must have been, and was, and is, these 7 Betlers combined into one. Arizal is these 7 Betlers. Now, in telling that story of the 3rd and 4th Betler, this came about in a strange manner too. Because that Friday night, it was customary that Arizal would sit at the table, and the people would sit around, they would eat together, and Arizal would speak to the Torah. That night he was sitting at the table, he was filled with sadness, tears, tragedy. He was sitting there feeling very sad, very pained about the fact that Arizal's daughter, Udal, Arizal's daughter Udal, who had a son, infant, this infant was very, very ill. In those days, war in general, of course, as is known by the tzadikim, we find that the great Nashim Tikuney either were barren, they did not have children, or they had tzadik gidul bonim. They suffered very much in raising the children that were born and not live. This is because they had to carry the burden, the sins of all the people, so they suffered for all of them. The tefillahs had to cover for all of them. Arizal's daughter had already had a few children, daughters that had passed away. Were born and they died very shortly afterwards. Now she had this son who was very ill. Arizal sat at the table very sadly, very filled with sorrow and pain over the fact that his grandson was so ill. Of course, this was at that Friday night. Just a week later, as is known, this infant passed away too. Ultimately, that's why, of course, Arizal was so sad, because obviously he could see the future. He knew that there was no way to save this child. Why it had to be so, that's a mystery. Arizal once spoke about his own 2 sons. Arizal had 2 sons also that were born, who died in their infancy. And this is one of the mysteries too. Arizal spoke about the fact that the Ariyah Kodesh had children, sons also that died. The reason they died was because Arizal revealed certain secrets of Kabbalah. He revealed these secrets, therefore he was punished by having his children die. The question is, why not avoid revealing it? Keep it to yourself. What's so hard about not revealing it? The answer is that Arizal came to this world with that mission. He came to this world, his mission was to reveal those secrets. Because he revealed them, his children had to die. It's a quandary, a dilemma, a paradoxical case to which there is no solution. Do not reveal it, you're not fulfilling your mission. Reveal it, your children have to die. This was the Arizal's dilemma too. There is no explaining, we cannot understand the mysterious, unknown, unfathomable rules of heaven. Yet these are the rules which tzaddikim live by. So here Arizal apparently, obviously knew that this child was destined to die in just a few days, so he sat there very sadly at the table. Ultimately, though, Arizal's daughter Udal did have a son and daughter that lived. In fact, her son, Rav of Breslov, was one of the great followers of Rav Nosson during the Yemei Plois, the most trying times, when very few proved themselves true loyal students. He was one of those. That was his kedusha. Tzaddikus Udal's son. Meanwhile, sitting at the table in such a sad frame of mind, Arizal ate without speaking, and then they benched. They benched immediately, the people there, and Arizal sat there a little while longer, and while he sat at the table, he suddenly began to speak a discussion, a topic, a shir, relating to this grandchild of his. Apparently a very deep topic about how a heart can take just so much, and how the heart suffers the pain, the sorrow. A very deep topic, and from that Suddenly, Arizal said, where are we in that story of the Zion Bettlers? He began to tell the story of the third Bettler, and then the story of the fourth Bettler. He completed the story of the fourth Bettler. He got up and walked out of the room. Rabbi Nachman tells us, this is another amazing point, very strong point to consider, to think of, because these type of statements generally go lost. These are treasures that should not be lost. Nachman says that in his mind was racing, striving, searching, delving, with the greatest tension, greatest concentration possible to remember every word that Arizal said, to retain. His memory should retain every single word that was said, because he knew that every word of the story, each word, was so great it was like the whole Sefer Torah. Contained all these secrets of Kabbalah and all the Gemara's Benigla Benista. So he strove very hard to concentrate and retain the words of these two parts of the story. Arizal writes that because he worked so hard in retaining the story, there slipped out of his mind the shear Arizal gave prior to the story. He could not recall what Arizal spoke about before this, in reference to the child. There was a whole shear before that. Then afterwards he told the story. In order to keep the story, Arizal forgot that shear. He forgot it, he lost it completely. He writes that without not being ashamed to admit it. He admits the fact that my memory failed me. I could not bring back, and then for some reason, apparently he could not get it from others either. The others too had forgotten it. Whatever reason it was, the fact is that Arizal says he could not bring back that shear that was spoken, and it's lost. Chaval al Yavdin. It's a pity on that which went lost, could not be retrieved, but it did go lost. I could not remember it. If Arizal could say, Arizal, the Guri, the Tzadik Galen could say, he could say that I forgot, I don't recall, then surely we can understand that the power of forgetting can happen to any person without having to accuse or condemn or belittle, demean that person. The biggest Rosh Hashiva, the biggest Guri, could forget too. It doesn't make him worth any less. Doesn't mean that he doesn't have a mind or a brain, Chas Hashem. This is apparently the reason that Arizal writes this. To know that a person does forget part of what he learned, do not feel depressed, do not feel sad, because this could happen, it does happen. A person's mind is not perfect. Great tzaddikim in the past, the Gemara says the Tanoim had minds that retained. Whether he poured in, stayed. Of course, these stories too are told about later tzaddikim, and naturally believe that Moshe had the same kind of a mind. The Moshe learned, remained. You can see from Moshe's photo that there's no corner, no remotest corner of the Torah that he wasn't fully acquainted with. So, comparing minds, and Moshe's mind was surely the top of the list, above all the Gedolim and the Gedolim and the Bnei Torah, certainly. But even the Gedolim, they forget. We know that it's Shivei Luchos. Luchos were very holy. The broken Luchos, the letters are missing, they too are placed in the Holy Ark. Because if a person is old Luchos, the old ones, not the new ones, old ones that had no letters, the letters were gone, which means a Zaki, an old person with the letters, the knowledge is gone from him, he forgot, receives the same credit, is considered the same holy as the new ones. This statement is very vital for us to keep in mind always. To know that it is possible for any person to Chas Hashem forget, but he must at least strive, work very hard in remembering and retaining, as much as is his ability. This was on Friday night. The following Sunday, Arizal told the story of the fifth Bettler. Bettler who seemed to have a hunchback, was hunched. And on Tuesday, the Arizal told the story of the sixth Bettler. Sixth Bettler, the main one, the Bettler who had hands that were deformed, without hands. Then, one of the Arizal's Talmidim told a story about a certain item. The Arizal said, why, that's the story of the seventh Bettler. That relates to that story. He was about to tell it, but something happened, and they were interrupted, and the Arizal did not finish it. He did not go on to that, and the Arizal said, this means that you will never be able to hear the end of the story. The story of the seventh Bettler, or the tie-in with the beginning of the story. The Arizal said later on that you will not be able to hear it until Mashiach comes. When Mashiach comes, the story will be completed. Obviously, this means that the completion of the seventh Bettler relates to the coming of Mashiach. So then it's fit to tell that story relating to the coming of Mashiach's coming, the actual coming of Mashiach. We'll be able to see, to feel, to understand, and to participate in the story of the seventh Bettler. We should be zecher to be able to see that. We should be part of that. Those words were, you will not be zecher to hear this till Mashiach comes. Fine, we're ready to hear it now. We await the telling of the seventh Bettler. Arizal says now, as a rule, general rule, as we stated before, that every story Rabbi Arizal told required an isarusa de l'sata, required something to bring out that story, something from below. These stories obviously are the li'ela. They are very heavenly, they're very high, they're very exalted. They cannot come down by themselves. There must be something to bring them down. There was always the telling of a story, of the relating of an incident. Generally, it was something to do with current events. Something about current events that was told in Rabbi Arizal's presence. Rabbi Arizal said, now, once you mention that, this releases the chance to speak about this heavenly story. So always, that's what led to the telling of these stories. If not, this most important of all stories. Rabbi Arizal once said, too, he once made this statement in relation to the story. One of the tales, Rabbi Arizal speaks about the mitzvah of giving tzedakah to the tzadikim. He said it's like a person who plants a seed in the ground. You plant a seed, that seed is edible. You can eat that. You can give it to your animals to eat. You're taking good food and putting it into the ground, that seed is going to rot. It's going to spoil. You're sacrificing an edible piece of food. But if you plant it in fertile ground, in fertile soil, that's going to produce a lot. Rich soil produce a whole crop of vegetation, of food will come from that one little seed. That is the case of giving tzedakah to the tzadikim. You're planting in fertile soil. You give this tiny little drop, this drop of money, whatever it is very small, put it into the hand of the tzadikim, it takes root, and you receive tremendous dividends. You can plant one single seed, you can have a whole tree come out with thousands and thousands of times as much as that seed contained. And it's the same as giving tzedakah to the tzadikim. You plant that one little drop, give that little bit of tzedakah, you get back so much wealth from the schus of that tzedakah. I once said that when a person gives me tzedakah, he thinks that he is giving. With me, when one gives, it's not like you give anywhere else. When you give, you take. When one gives me, when I receive, I am actually giving, not receiving. Physically, it looks like I'm receiving something, but actually, I'm giving. And this, of course, related to the story the sixth Bettler told about these wise men, these Chachamim tzadikim were discussing about their power of their hands, what they can do with their hands. One of them said he has the power that when he receives, he's actually giving. The Bettler said this refers, of course, to tzedakah. I once said, I have that power. This was a passing remark that, in other words, whatever case you'll find in the story of the 7 Bettlers, that's myself, I have that power. It happened to come up at that moment, the story of tzedakah, so Rabbi Nachman was there as the one who has this koyach. Also, Rabbi Nachman once said that it would be much better, for the sake of all, if I told this story, in fact, all these stories, it's pretty nice, better if I told these stories without showing anything openly, any hint or any sign of kedusha in these stories. It's just a plain folklore, a story told by people, a tale. It's just tales being told, because then it would bring out the purest degree of emunah in those who would read it. You read a story, you see no kedusha in it at all. You have to have pure faith. For instance, the case of all the Sforim in the Torah itself. When you learn Bereshis, it's this whole sefer filled with Musa. You learn about Avraham Avinu, Vita Eshel, he was at Machlis Eidach, his tremendous amount of Mesiras Nefesh, the tests he passed, sacrificing his son, Yitzhak Avinu going through the Nisyonis, Yaakov Avinu going through so many tests with his battles, and Hashem spoke to him. There's a lot of Musa there. A story of Yosef about tzadik, this fills a person with a desire, emulate them. Then Shmeis, Moshe Rabbeinu, all the Musa, the status of Dibrais, the Torah being given, the mitzvahs of the Torah. And as you go along, you find throughout the rest of the Torah, Yeshua, the Sheftim, Shmuel Hanavi, Lochem, all filled with Musa. All lessons that each Jew should know. But you get the one sefer, Shira Shidim, what do you find there? Look for a word of Musa, you can't find it. In Shira Shidim, where you find no Musa, you don't find the word, the name of Hashem even, that is Kodesh Kodeshim, Holy of Holies. Because that contains the secret depth of all the holy names of Hashem, all the heavenly words, Kabbalah. Menel said that would have been nice if he would have left the Sipur Mesias as hidden as that. Completely hidden, to have no trace, no sign of open holiness in them, that people would have to have the same degree of emunah. Pure emunah, they're learning something that is above all the others for them, in Kedusha, and to believe the Pshitas. However, the Menel felt that it would be better if he would reveal at least a little bit, once in a while, a little bit Kedusha in them, a little bit depth, that people should know, rather than just the Emunah alone. To know there is something very deep. There are secrets hidden in these stories. We see this, of course, the end. Menzel speaks about the tzadikim and the Syrian Bettlers, the power of these tzadikim, the fact that you have 4 levels, 10 degrees. You can see this speaking about the Sphinos, the Elamite. We don't understand much about it, but we see that there is not an ordinary tale there. There is something that's filled with Kedusha. Because I want this, that those who are not that perfect in the Buddha should at least know there is something deep in this. There are secrets of Torah that, coupled with the Emunah, you have some Yediyah or to reinforce your Emunah. This is the story behind the story of the Zion Bettlers. Now we come back to Sichas Haran, back to the sayings of the Arizal. The Arizal once spoke about a topic that is mentioned at length in the Tikuney Zohar. It's sort of a mysterious topic, unknown topic, which is revealed to a degree by the Arizal. You know that every person, all people, seem to be born alike. Everyone has the same number of organs, the same type of body, the same type of functions. Of course, the minds are different, the heart, the will, the goodness, the evil, Each person can select whichever path he wants. But yet, some are born with a greater degree of talent than others. There are ones who have kishrenes, abilities that others don't have. Some are even born, chas v'shalom, deformed. There are some infants born with deformities, chas v'shalom. But these are cases of abnormalities. These are known to be exceptions to the normal. It's not the normal case. There is one item that is strange. Question of why it should be so. The case of something which is normal and yet is different. It's accepted as normal and yet is different. And why it should be so. Why are there some people who are born with a tendency to be left-handed instead of right-handed? What makes a person left-handed? We say left, it means wrong. It would seem it's wrong-handed. You have the right hand, the right, proper hand, and the wrong, or the left hand. In fact, in Hebrew, it's called iter yad yaminai. A left hand, there's no word left-handed. A left-handed person is called one whose right hand is tied up. It's locked. His right hand is locked. He cannot use it too freely. He's forced to use his left hand. What is the secret behind this item, left-handedness? Why is a person born left-handed? And also, of course, should it be advisable for a person to try to overcome this? Is it something to overcome, or should he accept it? There are people who are left-handed, and physically, you can have a southpaw pitcher, baseball, who is the best pitcher in the whatever it is, the leagues. Whatever you call those things. Be the best pitcher out, though he is left-handed. It does not make him inferior. The same type of work. You can have a person who lifts weights. He's left-handed. He can lift more weights with his left hand. He's more powerful than the strongest person who is right-handed. So we see that it's not a physical defect. It's just a different nature. His nature is that he has more power in his left than the right. Of course, there is also right-footed and left-footed too. To us, we don't notice these things because it never comes into play. But there are certain mitzvahs in the Torah where it makes a very big difference. Or it's very vital to know which foot gives a person favor, which for the stronger, which one leads. There are different ways of detecting it that are told in the Shulchan. But generally what we do is a difference between a right and left hand. A right-handed person and an iter yad yaminai, a left-handed one. Arizal says that what makes a person be born left-handed, not because something that the parents did. The mother might have seen something and she was frightened and she moved to the left, sharp left turn, and this way gave the child left-handed preference. It is not due to the parents. It is due to the parent, meaning the person himself. Person himself, in a prior life, his former Gilgal, before he was reincarnated, what he did during that lifetime will determine whether he comes back when he's reborn right-handed or left-handed. This is what determines left-handedness. Menachem says we can see this, a hint to this in the Torah. We find that Kedach, who was the leader of the tribe, one of the leaders of the tribe, and who was a Bikeach, who was very wise, very learned, a big Talmud Chacham, a leader, yet he came out and rebelled against Moshe Rabbeinu and Aharon HaKohen. He rebelled. He had all he covered in honor and greatness in the world, and wisdom. But he said he wanted to have also He wanted to be the Kohen Gadol. He was a Levi. He wanted the kahuna. He was jealous of Moshe Rabbeinu being the king, Aharon HaKohen being the Kohen Gadol. So he said he wants to take over to be the Kohen Gadol. Why should Aharon HaKohen be Kohen Gadol? This was his rebellion. Menachem says from this story we can see just a hint. It is fact. This is only a hint to show fact that Menachem says that a person who committed a certain misdeed during his lifetime, that he's not punished for it now. He is punished for it in a future Gilgul. When he is reborn, he is given a sign to show what he had done wrong in the former Gilgul. If he was a Baal Machlekes, one who instigates, who causes friction, who causes disharmony, battle, controversy, causes controversy, he rebels, causes a battle or any kind of friction in a group, or he rebels against his superiors, Machlekes Milchama, then when he is reborn as a left-handed person. This, again, we see this from the fact that Kodach, what was Kodach's crime? Machlekes, Milchama, rebelling against Moshe Rabbeinu Aharon HaKohen. What did he want? What was related with this Machlekes? He wanted to switch. He was a Levi. He wanted to take over Kohen Gadol, become Kohen Gadol. The Zohar Kodesh says that the Sfidos, Chesed, Gevura, Tiferes, the three top Sfidos of the seven. Chesed, Gevura, Tiferes. Chesed is right, Gevura is left, Tiferes is center. Chesed is Avraham, Gevura is Yitzchak Avinu, Tiferes is Yaakov Avinu. That's how it starts. Later we also have these same three applied to Chesed is Kohen, Levi is Gevura, and Tiferes, the center, both is Yisrael, right in the center. So therefore we see that Chesed, or right, the right is the Kohen, the left is the Levi, Din. To want to transpose these two, to switch Levi for Kohen, that means he's switching the wrong side, right to left, left to right. That's why he was switched. That's why we have the person who is left-handed. That's a sign that he did wrong between the right and the left. What was the wrong? Kodach's act was Machlekes. The word Machlekes is synonymous with Kodach. Children of Kodach did not die. In this story with Kodach, what does that teach us? That in all generations, the children of Kodach, which means the descendants of Kodach, the act of Kodach remains alive. Whenever you'll find a Machlekes in any generation, it's because this is a descendant of Kodach. It comes from the symbol of Kodach. So we see that Machlekes goes together, is reflected in the switching of right and left. This is only a hint to show, Arizal bringing out the point, that a person who's a Baal Machlekes, when it causes Machlekes, he will have this trouble, that the right and left will be switched. His left hand will become his right hand. One who is left-handed, when we speak about the left-handed person's hands, we call his right hand what is normally a person's left. That is called his right hand, his superior hand. So we see a complete switch between right and left, and that shows that it is Machlekes. Second case, too, that is brought. The second dilemma is a hint to, is the fact that Arizal mentioned the fact, Pasuk tells us about the tribe of Benjamin during the Civil War. When there was a war between the 11 tribes and the one tribe, Benjamin, another we find that Benjamin had 700 left-handed sharpshooters. 700 left-handed sharpshooters. Why go into this whole story The Torah should tell us a story about these 700 left-handed sharpshooters. They were left-handed, repeat a few times. Why tell us something like that? How does it relate to the story? Why is that so relevant? And then it says we can see from here, again this fact, again hinting to us, teaching us this hidden fact. Ben Yamin, Ben Yamin. Yamin is right. Right? What happened? They went out and caused a civil war. They caused machlekes. Because of that, the stress is put that the best men were now itiriyat. They were now left. They switched left-handed, right-handed to left-handed because of the fact they caused machlekes and muhammad. So this again is a sign proving what the Ben Azal's point is. Ben Azal also said once in the Sefer Hamidas, another statement. This, of course, too, obviously is so. Here we say that this Sikha, the Ben Azal said that a person who was a Baal Machlekes, when he is reborn, he comes into the world, he's reborn as a left-handed person. The Sefer Hamidas Ben Azal says too that a person who was a liar in the last Gilgul, when he's reborn as a left-handed person. Both of these are so. So a person who is left-handed means that does not prove, of course, that he was one of those two. But it certainly is much more probable that he was either one of those two or very possibly both. What is important now? A person is told that he is a liar, corrected. Person is told he's Malachlekas, corrected. But why tell him that he was one in the last Gilgul? What's so important about his knowing that? The answer is that, naturally, the Gemara says, Avuch b'may zoyet tvei. They ask a person, what mitzvah does your father take very particular care in? Each one, the Gemara, the rabbis rest, they said, my father thinking about this mitzvah, that mitzvah. What is meant by that? Arizal says, Hashem HaKadosh says that this means that your father, meaning, what mitzvah do you take care of? What mitzvah are you particular about? Because you are great enough to know your former Gilgul. Which mitzvah is it you came back to this world, reborn again, to complete that which you failed to complete in the last Gilgul? And these tzaddikim knew about it. They said, I missed a certain mitzvah, therefore in this world I'm very particular about completing that mitzvah. That's for the very great tzaddikim to know. The ordinary person could not tell what happened in this former Gilgul. But in this case, though, the Ben Azal reveals it is possible for an ordinary person to, a regular layman to know that these two items are so serious. Number one, machlekes, that's above all else. One who causes machlekes could destroy the chance for parnasa, could destroy the chance for harmony, could destroy the chance of Mashiach's coming. The whole problem with the Mekiva's Talmidim was because of machlekes, inner machlekes. Our success was that there was peace and harmony among them. Or a person who, chas v'shalom, speaks sheker, he's removing the seal of Hashem, chas v'shalom. So a person who is left-handed should know that very possibly he was plagued in these two things, or at least these two, the Ma'izor Tzei. He should be very careful to correct or to see to it that he avoids going back into this pitfall. In that way, if this is a sign, most probably, if he is in that category, most probably, if he did come back to this world because of those two shortcomings, at least he'll know that he has perfected it. He does not repeat the same error as in the last Gilgul. This is the purpose, the time when the Ben Azal revealed this, and how beneficial it is to know. Because it's noteworthy, too, that in past generations there never was so large a number of left-handed people. It's only recently we find more and more of them. You ask any sefer who writes tefillin, those who make tefillin, I'll tell you that the last generation there were much less left-handed tefillin than there is this generation. 2 generations back, still less. That's how the generations proceed and decline. Therefore, we know that the midah of emes is so vital, especially now, when the sheker is so spread over the world. We have to see to preserve it, to guard it. We should be zecher, all of us, to watch our tongues and our actions speak only the emes, which is the chesed of kedusha, the name of Hashem, and to see that we keep the shalom among ourselves. This shalom will spread to shalom on Yisrael, and it's supposed to be mizrach and the sea to come in. Mashiach Tikuney, Vinyan Beis Hamikdash, the Simcha Cholius, name of the Amen. We continue to share Arizal and Sichai Saran. We're up to Seif Kuf Nun Gimel, paragraph 153. This deals with reference to the Kutei Maran, the Arizal Sefer, and Kutei Maran Tanina, the second part, second volume, Torah, chapter Ayin Ches. Here, Rosenfeld explains the story behind that Torah, behind that lesson that Arizal taught. In order to understand, let's first delve into Arizal's words. So let's first learn a piece of the Kutei Maran tonight, and then we'll understand what the Arizal is referring to in this paragraph in reference to that Torah. Arizal says in the Kutei Maran that there are times when the tzadik emes himself, which means the tzadik, who is the holiest individual in the world, and in most cases, practically all cases, the most learned tzadik, the greatest London in the world, yet there are times when he conducts himself in a manner that is very simple, the same as an ordinary layman. And he speaks simple words rather than very advanced, high, deep words of Torah, secrets of Torah. And when a person who observes closely will not see anything unusual from the tzaddik emes. You don't see him studying Torah at that moment. You don't see him doing something that's very sacred. There are such times when he becomes a ish poshet, a simple person, like a layman. Now, to explain this, why, how come, Aharon says, Da means that I'm stating a fact. This is axiomatic. It is a fact dictated so in heaven, and as is known, Arizal's Da means this is dictated so in the Elam HaAtzilus. This is direct from Elam HaAtzilus, the top level of heaven, the heaven that is above the throne of Hashem. This fact that the life that exists is the Torah. Eitz Chayim Hi, Ki Heim Chayinu V'Yerech Yamenu. A person derives his lifeline, his breath of life, comes from the Torah. The origin and source of life is from the Torah. Without the Torah, there is no life. Without the Torah, a person cannot live. So since that is the lifeline, let us say that is the oxygen supply. If one cuts off the oxygen supply, and death, chas v'shalom, is imminent. In that case then, the kasha is, how is it possible for a person to abstain from the study of Torah even for a moment? One moment should be enough to kill the person. How is it possible for any person to stop learning Torah at any given time? Now, it is also impossible for a person to learn Torah constantly, because even the biggest Lamdan, the most learned tzaddik, the greatest tzaddik, the holiest person, as long as he's in his physical form and he's compelled to perform certain physical acts, whether it's eating or sleeping or doing something physically, or he must stop the study of Torah for a period of time, whether it's long or short, but there must be times during the day, during the night, during his lifetime, when he must stop the study of Torah. In that case, how does this tzaddik derive his life? How does he live during those moments when he's not studying Torah? At the same time, the kasha is also obvious. That's the tzaddik emes. That's the biggest lamdan. So that's the great sages who studied Torah throughout the entire day and night, practically. even they must stop, how do they live? How about those people who are simple, who don't spend all day long in the study of Torah? What gives them life? How do they continue to live if they are not studying Torah? And more so, how about those people who are very simple-minded, practically illiterate, who cannot study Torah? Even if they try, they don't know how to learn. What keeps them alive? What sustains them? This is a big question Arizal brings up. Arizal answers again, no. Axiomatically, the factual answer is that at that time, when a tzadik stops, pauses for those moments, the study of Torah, he derives his life from what? From derech eretz. Derech eretz means the derech eretz Yisrael. From that road, that path, that way that leads to Eretz Yisrael, that road that leads to Eretz Yisrael, that is the lifeline of this tzaddik at that time. So when he stops the study of Torah, he needs this life-giving oxygen. He gets it from this road to Eretz Yisrael. And hence, all those simple-minded people, or all those simpler people who do not study Torah all day, who spend a lot of time away from the study of Torah, or practically most of the time, or some of them all of the time, where do they get their life from? They get their life from this tzaddik, who's receiving this special life from the road to Eretz Yisrael. He transfers this life to them and sustains them. Which means, therefore, that the majority of the world, practically the whole world, receives their life from this one tzaddik who's drawing life from the road to Eretz Yisrael. All this sounds very mysterious. Arizal says, now, we'll explain that, we'll bring it down to a level we can understand. Arizal says that what is meant by this road, this path to Eretz Yisrael? Before the Torah was given in the time of Moshe Rabbeinu. Now that means that there were generations prior to that, and the Torah was not handed down to the world. Since the Torah is the life of this world, the whole world itself, not just people, but heaven and earth cannot exist without the Torah. The Gemara brings a posek which says, "My brisi, if not for my Torah, there could not be the heavens and earth. The rules of heaven and earth existing would have to disintegrate. They would have to disappear. Heaven and earth and everything in it could not exist without the Torah itself. That keeps them, that maintains them. So, Adam Arishon was the first generation. Noach was the 10th. Avraham was the 20th. Yitzchak, Yaakov, Levi, Kahos, Amram, and Moshe Rabbeinu. So you have 26 generations till the Torah was given. 26 generations without Torah. How did these 26 generations exist? The answer is, the Gemara says that there are in chapter Kapitel Kuf Lamed Vov in Tehillim. There is Halel HaGodel, we say it every Shabbos morning. Hedel Hashem Kitev Kili Elam Chastoi. There's a list of Kili Elam Chastoi. That chapter contains 26 lines, Kili Elam Chastoi. Li Elam, the world, exists Chastoi through the chesed, the kindness of Hashem. Why 26 lines, 26 times? This is how Hashem sustained the 26 generations, with His chesed, with His kindness. What kind of a kindness is that called? Chesed Shochinam. A kindness that is free, it's unpaid for. Nobody paid for it, nobody had to serve time for it. Hashem gave it of His own goodness. He gave His chesed Shochinam to the world, He maintained the world with his kindness alone. There was no Torah given to the world yet, so the world existed for 26 generations with this Chesed Shochinah, which is an Eitzer, a treasure that Hashem has. Hashem possesses a treasury filled with Chesed Shochinah, this kindness. Hashem gave of this treasure to the world during those 26 generations. Once the Torah was given to the world, there was no need to have this Chesed Shochinah anymore, because now the world was maintained through the study of Torah. Now this treasury, special treasure in the treasury of Hashem, of kindness, Chesed Shochinah, free kindness, this is what the tzadik emes draws upon when he is not studying Torah. He draws from this treasury of Chesed. Why? Because what then is that treasury for? That treasury is for the sake of a tzaddik who must, perforce, by physical law, abstain from the study of Torah for a certain period of time, for minutes or whatever time it is during the day. At that time, Hashem has a special chesed, this treasure of kindness. Hashem does not keep that treasure for the shoyim, for evil people who refuse to study the Torah and don't believe in it naturally. That treasure is made for this great tzaddik, the holiest of tzaddikim. For him the treasure is made, and therefore this tzaddik derives his life from that treasure. What happened during those 26 generations? Let's go back to that for a moment. Then there was no Torah. There was, of course, Torah for certain individuals. It was not given officially to the world. The world itself, all its inhabitants, aside from those few select people, lived because of this Chesed Shochinah, this treasure. Those generations are called, they are called Derecheretz Kodmo LaTorah. Derecheretz is a saying that's derived from this. We said a special saying, a bitui, where we say that Derecheretz also means respect. Before you learn Torah, first have respect. Respect for your elders, respect for the wiser people, respect for that which is holy, respect for that which is a place that is sacred. But in essence, it really means Derecheretz Kodmo LaTorah. Derecheretz means the way of the land, the civilized way that people lived. They lived civilly, Derecheretz. This came before the Torah was given to the world. They lived civilly. What maintained them? Civil life. They know they had to live without having a Torah. They had to live without crime, law and order, because otherwise there'd be chaos. Otherwise there'd be devastation. So there was this Derecheretz, this way of the land that existed before the Torah was given. But in truth, in essence, in fact, even then, we cannot really say that they lived without the zechus of Torah. Then too, what really maintained them in this Derecheretz was the Torah itself. But where was the Torah? The Torah was not given. How could they live? What did the Torah do for them if the Torah wasn't here? The answer is that the Torah was here in a very hidden form. The Torah was ne'elam. It was an oil ha-ne'elam, a hidden light that was completely hidden. It cannot be seen, yet it was there, and it kept the world going. Where was this Torah hidden? Here we come to an interesting point. To know the origin, to reveal certain aspects of the Torah itself. We know that how do you put the whole Torah in capsule form? The Gemara says we're not allowed to say this because Kafrim, atheists, would get the wrong impression. They would get the wrong impression. We won't. So we could think this, we could say it and know this to be fact. We don't publicize this for others. But actually the Torah in a capsule form is all contained in the Aseret HaDibros. The Ten Commandments actually is a form that contains all of the mitzvahs of the Torah. Now, it's simple to understand because we know that the Aseret HaDibros are 613 letters, or 613 plus 7, 620 letters, and these each stand for one of the mitzvahs of the Torah. Each one, of course, has in it a lot of depth, and has all the mitzvahs of the Rabbanan, commentaries, and so forth. But we can see where the whole Torah is found in these 613 letters, or in the Aseres HaDibros. Plus the fact that the Gemara says, truthfully, actually, the Luchos, the 2 tablets which were given from heaven, had basically these 10 commandments. But it wasn't just the words of the 10 commandments. In between each commandment you had the whole Torah carved out on this stone. All the 60 Gemaras, all the Sifrei Kabbalah, the Shulchan Aruch, and all the subsequent Sforim, thousands, millions of Sforim written, were all carved out on these 2 tablets. How could you fit all that on tablets? The tablets were the Malam and Amokah. They were above the concept of space, because Hashem wrote it. Hashem is not dictated to by space. Hashem rules over the laws of space, therefore Hashem could do it. So therefore we could see where the whole Torah is contained in these 10 commandments. They said it's a Dibros. Now there is a direct relationship between the Aseres HaDibros of Torah and the creation of the world. Because Hashem created the world Bereshis, with the Torah. The Torah is called Bereshis. So the world was created with the Torah as the blueprint for the world. There is a direct relationship between the creation and the Torah, and the fact that just as there are 10 Dibros, commandments, as the basis for the Torah, so too creation was contained in 10 statements. 10 statements by Hashem. 10 times it says, Vayemer Elokim, in the days of creation. And Hashem said, let there be light, let there be a sky. 10 times. That is 9 times, plus the word Bereshis, which also is called Maimar, a statement by Hashem. So we have 10 statements by Hashem. It's called the Asora Ma'amores. Asora Ma'amores Nivra Ha'olam. You have that in the 5th parak in Pirkei Avos. But these 10 statements by Hashem, 10 proclamations, these 10 are in relation to, they fit perfectly with, synchronized with the 10 Dibros, the 10 commandments. So where was the Torah hidden during those 26 generations? In the Asura Ma'amores, the 10 statements by Hashem. So we say that there was derech eretz. It means there was derech eretz, civilized way of life. Life went along normally. Person went chopping wood, building, selling, drawing water from a well, planting fields. In this work, in this derech eretz, the way of ordinary public life, there was contained, hidden the Torah itself, which sustained the world. Now, the 10 Ma'amores, the 10 sayings by Hashem, this the Chazal say, Asher Kodesh brings, tzaddikim explain, say that what is the reason why the Torah itself starts with Bereshis? What is Torah? Torah means mitzvahs, commands of Hashem, perform mitzvahs. So why should Hashem start the Torah, which is made for the sake of mitzvahs, start with Bereshis, the story of creation? Why not start with a mitzvah? Command. Keep the Shabbos. The first word of the Torah should be, observe the Shabbos, because that's the most important mitzvah. Or the first mitzvah of the Torah, get married and have children. Why start with Bereshis, Bora V'Tim, Hashem created the world? Why is that starting? Why does the Torah start with that, which is not really a mitzvah? Answer is, because of the fact that Hashem started the Torah with that to show that who is the master and creator and owner of the world? Hashem. Hashem created the world. Hashem owns the world. And therefore, Hashem has the power and the legal right to give His world to whomever He wants. Whenever Hashem wants, He gives that world to him. So this is the posek Kayach Mas of Higid Li Amri. koyach ma'asa, the power of Hashem's deeds, actions, Hashem told to the Jews in the first posek in the Torah. Koyach is 28 letters of the first posek in the Torah. Why those 28 letters first? To teach us the koyach ma'asa, the power of Hashem who created the world, and therefore let the world know that Hashem owns the world, and Eretz Yisrael belongs to Hashem. Whoever Hashem wants to give it to, He can give it to, and no nation or United Nations can object to the act of Hashem, who is the legal owner. So when Hashem said, I give Eretz Yisrael to the Jews, Eretz Yisrael, it's the land of the Jews, Hashem has a right to take it from the Goyim who are living there only because Hashem allowed them to live for that short period of time. Hashem lets them live on His property for a short time. It's mine, you now leave, I give it to whomever I want. That's the case of the Jews. So we have that first pasuk in the Torah to offset any claims by any kind of Arab countries, or Russians, or Rishoyim, any nation at all, who objects to the Jews living in Eretz Yisrael. This statement proves that Eretz Yisrael belongs to the Jews because it was given to the Jews by the owner and creator of the land. This is why the Torah begins with Bereshis, these 10 Amoris. So since these 10 sayings of creation are actually also, they contain in them hiddenly the 10 commandments, the Torah, and these 10 sayings first were what maintained the world until the Torah was given. So therefore these 10 sayings are called the Derech Eretz. Before the Torah had Derech Eretz, civilization, but also Derech Eretz. We see now, this is Derech Eretz, the way to Eretz Yisrael. How can a Jew get to Eretz Yisrael? If the guy will rise up to stop him, this is the way. These 10 sayings by Hashem. Bereshis bara Elokim, V'em Elokim Hashem created. This is the Derech to Eretz Yisrael, the way to Eretz Yisrael. And this is what we said before. At that time there was this chesed shochinam, the kindness of Hashem that was given free before the Torah was given. That's these same 10 sayings by Hashem, which contain this chesed shochinam, because this is the way, the derech eretz, which the world existed by kodma the Torah before the Torah was given. And it's this derech eretz, it's this chesed shochinam, this road, path to Eretz Yisrael, that the tzadik emes draws upon to maintain himself, to sustain himself with life when he does not study Torah. The same thing too, when Jews are in Golus, they're not in Eretz Yisrael. What are they doing in different countries? When a Jew comes to a strange land, he comes to America, or he comes to European countries, or he comes to even the Oriental countries, or African countries. Everywhere you go, you'll find Jews. When a Jew comes there, does he have a right to settle there? The answer is yes, because he is using that same derech eretz, derech li'eretz Yisrael. What is the derech li'eretz Yisrael? The fact that koyach ma'asav higid li'yamai. The fact that Hashem created the world, Hashem gives it to whomever He wants. The Jew settles there, he actually, where he settles, he makes this place sacred. He makes the place holy, he sanctifies it through his mitzvahs and the study of Torah. Once he does that, he's utilizing the study of Torah, utilizing the 10 sayings of Hashem, the power of creation, to make this place belong to the Jews. So a Jew actually conquers. Everywhere he goes, he conquers that land, becomes the true owner, because he now receives it from Hashem the Creator. Now this is what the tzadik emes draws upon, and that's why the tzadik emes is forced. He is forced. Why not allow a tzadik to live a life of pure spiritual life alone, without anything physical? It's necessary to have the tzadik emes drop from the spiritual temporarily to go into the physical so that he could live with this chesed shochinam, to draw upon this special treasure of kindness, not so much for himself, but to be able to take this and to feed, to nourish those who do not study Torah, those who need life, to keep them alive. He is the only one that can do it. This too is the tefillah of Moshe Rabbeinu. Moshe Rabbeinu said, "V'eschanan el Hashem ba'is hahilemer." I davened to Hashem at that time as follows: "Please Hashem, allow me to go to Yisrael." V'eschanan el Hashem. Eschanan means I pleaded. Chaim, for kindness. I pleaded, Hashem, give me that kindness that you have, chesed shochinam. Where does that kindness come from? Ba'is hahi lemoy. That time. What time? That time. Way back, the beginning of time, lemoy, saying, those sayings of Hashem. The 10 sayings of Hashem, those 10 sayings, which comes forth the chesed shochinam, which is the derech eretz, the path to Yisrael. This, Moshe Rabbeinu pleaded with Hashem, give me that path to Yisrael. Allow me to get it. That's the true interpretation of that sentence. Again, this we see, the tzadik emes asking for what rightfully is his. The tzadik emes draws upon this treasury of kindness by Hashem. With this kindness of Hashem, he maintains himself, and he also gives of this chesed to the whole world who needs it, because they're not studying Torah. He keeps them alive. What is the point of all of this? Arizal says, now we get to the point. Keeping all this in mind, the point now is that everybody, we, people like us, simple people, better than us, simpler than we are, we know our shortcomings. Let's be honest, we have to learn Torah 24 hours a day in order to live. At least if we must perform certain physical acts, so it should be moments, less than 24 hours. In all honesty, we don't learn even half of 24 hours. We don't. Many of us don't learn even a tenth of 24 hours a day. Now, how can we afford to learn so little? What can we justify ourselves with? How can we say we deserve life if we're cutting off our lifeline? With what can we live? And yet, the fact is that we don't. Knowing this, we still do not study Torah. Some more and some less. There are some chosen few who sit in the kollel and learn many hours a day. Even they too will have to admit that there are hours that they don't, many hours. But the vast majority of people do not study Torah, or they do study to a very tiny extent. What's much worse is that not only do they not study Torah, but even the Torah that exists, the Torah that they know, they actually oppose. They actually transgress. They break the laws that are written in that Torah. Not studying Torah, committing sins against the mitzvahs of the Torah, this is very frightening. With what can a person maintain himself? How can a person avoid from just giving up hope? Going to the extent where he becomes so depressed that life is not worth living, chas v'shalom. With what can a person strengthen himself and add a degree of simcha to his life, despite the fact that things are so bleak? This is the point that Arizal brings up. Arizal says it is forbidden for a person to ever give up hope. A person can say, I can't learn, I don't learn, there's no hope for me, there's no life for me, finished. Arizal says no such thing as giving up hope. No person should chas v'shalom give up hope. No person should make yush. Yush means the giving up of all hope. Because even the simplest person should know that there is a simple key. If you want life, the life that comes from the Torah itself, you can have it. It's right there for the asking, for the taking. Tzaddik emes has this treasury of chesed, shochinam, this kindness of Hashem, which can sustain a person, take it from the tzaddikim. How fortunate is that person who knows of this and can sustain himself, can strengthen himself, can satisfy himself, can be filled with the simcha and chassidus, knowing that, being close to the tzaddikim, he can always draw life from this tzadik. But of course, the main thing is that even that person who is so far, has descended so far into the abysmal depths of sin, crime, doubt, despair, no matter how far down he has gone, to the lowest level of Gehenna in his lifetime, that person too can strengthen himself and know that there is hope. There's absolutely hope for himself as well as for the greatest person on earth, because the tzaddik emes gives of this chesed, this kindness, to every person, to the most simple person that exists. What then? One problem. A person must go out and seek. He must daven to Hashem. The lowest person must fill his tefillos with power, with tears, with pleading to Hashem, Hashem, bring me close to you, bring me close to the tzaddik emes. Allow me to find the tzaddik emes, to believe in him, and to hold on to him. Because he is my lifeline. No matter how low down I descend, he is the lifeline, the one thing that can keep me alive, here and in the future world. Menachem says that Ashrei to that person who is close to the tzaddik emes during his lifetime. This is a task that a person must do while he's alive, because after a person dies, he'll need the tzaddik emes there especially. But then it's very, very difficult, if at all possible, to get close to the tzaddik emes. Time to get close to the tzaddik emes is during a person's lifetime, and therefore he should strive for this with every ounce of effort he's got. Is it easy? No. Because there is one enemy. There is the Satan, whose whole dedication is to confuse people. How does he confuse them? He sets up a lot of puppets, a lot of imitations. They are called Mefarsamim Shel Sheker, false leaders who are called great tzaddikim, rabbis, rebbes, Hasidic leaders, and so forth. And all these false Mefarsamim Shel Sheker mislead. They draw away people from the tzaddik emes, draw them to themselves, and people follow like blind sheep this so-called leader. They are misled until they forget about the real goal, finding the tzaddik emes. So this is one item that the Satan works on so hard. Secondly, the Satan too creates friction among tzaddikim, that you find tzaddikim themselves argue among themselves. One belittles the other, so it's difficult to tell which one is telling the truth. This one says this tzaddik is not a tzaddik, this one is not a tzaddik, and so a person becomes so confused he cannot detect the truth. For this, the solution is only cry out to Hashem. Despite this, Hashem, lead me on the right path that I can find the true light. The true light, the Oid HaOidus of the tzaddik emes. This should be a person's goal. In that kind of tefillah, the person does that with sincerity. He shows Hashem that he really wants. He has his whole heart in it. That person will be zecher, ultimately, to finding tzaddik emes. He has to have a deep rotzain, a deep sincerity, a deep desire, and the ability. This is the Torah in Likutei Moharan. Arizal here, Sichos Sinan, explains, tells the story behind this lesson. This Torah was told on Shabbos Nachamu, Shabbos after Tisha B'Av, just a few months before Rabbeinu Zal's Estalkus. At that time, Rabbi Arizal had moved to his last home in Oman. This was a special home with a garden in front of it. He had windows overlooking this garden. And this was at a time, as is known, Rabbi Arizal was very ill. He suffered a lung disease for close to 3 years. His health had deteriorated to a point where it was difficult for him to breathe. So he needed this fresh air from this garden, a special location. And then I said he looked forward to this home. He looked forward to what these windows look out upon. One time he said, "What a beautiful garden." And the Talmidim said, "Yes, it is very nice." He said, "I don't mean this garden. I mean the garden further ahead, the cemetery there, which are planted all the neshamis, all the Kadeshim, the many thousands of Jews who were killed for the sake of their religion who are buried in Oman. Then that's why I want to be buried here, Betafka, especially in Oman." On this Shabbos, that Friday night, Shabbos Nachamu, Rabbi Arizal came out of his private room into the large room where all his followers, Talmidim, and local residents would come to see Rabbi Arizal at the time of Kiddush. It was customary to come to Rabbi Arizal for Kiddush on Friday night. Rabbi Arizal came out of that room. He made Kiddush, and after Kiddush, instead of going back to his private quarters, he sat down at the table there in front of all the people because he was so weak physically and so tired, he had to sit down to rest. And while sitting there, he began to speak. And he said to the people, "Why do you come to me? Why do you travel so far to come to see me? What can you get from me? I am a very simple person, a simple layman." Yiddish is the word prostak. Prostak means the simplest illiterate person. Very simple layman. I am an ish poshet mi'oid. Very, very simple. Menachem repeated this again and again. It's difficult to understand. Menachem would say, "I am that simple. Why did he repeat this?" And then he said, "The only thing that keeps me alive, I sustain myself with, is the fact that I went to Eretz, my trip to Eretz Yisrael. My trip to Eretz is what keeps me alive." All mysterious words. But if we look at what that whole title was, we can understand the meaning behind it. At this time, at this moment, Aharon started to enter into this topic more, and then he became very filled with simcha, and he said this whole Torah, Ayin Ches, the one we just spoke about. There he explained the whole topic about the tzadik emes becoming simple, and through the fact that he is an ish poshet, he draws upon his chesed shochinam from this path to Eretz Yisrael, with which he then gives life to everyone. It was during this talk that Aharon cried out this immortal cry that remained eternally the key and motto of Rabbi Aharon's followers, something that keeps us alive this very day. Rabbi Aharon cried out with all his might, with all his power at that time, all his strength he put into these words, and he said, "Gewalt seit euch nicht miyayish, ein shum yish v'olam klal." Screamed out, "Do not give up hope. There is no such thing as giving up hope at all, ever. No matter where a person may be, no matter how low a person may be, a Jew is not allowed to give up hope." With such a cry coming from Rabbi Aharon, meaning that I am here, you can rest, rely on me, I will support you, with such an assurance, how could any Jew who has the proper emunah ever again worry, ever again have a fear, ever again have a problem or a doubt in his mind. No matter what happens to him, if Chas v'Shalom a Jew commits the worst sin, he could fall way down, very lowest, the abyss, deepest point, the nadir, bottom point, and yet he has that simcha. I fell so far, look, there's a rope around my waist, and no matter how far down I am, the tzadik is still holding on to me. He'll pull me up. That simcha alone can bring a person right back up to the top. 1 second of tshuva, he finds himself at the top of the head, because of the fact that he is attached through the emunah to the tzadik emes, knowing that there is no yish. A person who does not have this iskashus, he does something wrong, immediately he falls into despair and a depressed state of mind, and he gives up hope. For one who is zecher to this kind of emunah, there's no yish b'olam klal. A Jew is not allowed to ever dare to give up hope, no matter what happens. This was one of the most important lessons ever yet. As we said, this remained a Breslov motto, the motto of Rabbi Nachman, which Rabbi Nachman is most famous. Ein shum yish b'olam klal. Klal means absolutely at all. There is no yish, no giving up hope ever. Rabbi Nachman said this with a strong tone of voice, and he filled his Talmidim then with such a gratification, a satisfaction and happiness that this remained on. It was bequeathed. People inherited it afterwards, one generation to the next. To this day, till Mashiach comes, we live with that motto, knowing that the Rabbi Nachman's assurance continues to maintain us. And of course, the Yeshua of Hashem, or the Yeshua was that when Rabbi Nachman said, "I know nothing, I'm ish poshet," those words came forth, this tremendous Torah, this whole lesson that he said, and these words of assurance. At that time, Rabbi Nachman was so filled with simcha, a simcha of knowing that he's fusing life into the world, into future generations, that he sang Azameh B'Shvochen, that's these midas of Friday night. He sang these midas before he went to wash for the meal. Rabbi Nachman's custom was always to wash Hamaitzi first, and then sing Azameh B'Shvochen. At that time, he sang Azameh B'Shvochen first, before washing. It was very special. For that reason, there are many who adopted that custom throughout. From then on, to sing Azameh B'Shvochen, those midas before going to wash, or meaning even before Kiddush. Before making Kiddush, before going to wash, they first sing those midas. There are different customs in that. Of course, it doesn't matter, it's not that important which one you take. They're all good. Just that it's good to know the background, that when you see those who sing it before Kiddush and before washing, there is a reason. This would be the origin for it. Now, Aharon said then, he stressed that the arriving at his great height, his great madrega, was only through posek. The fact that he considered himself a very simple person, he didn't delve into the depths, secrets to serve Hashem through secretive measures and higher levels. Posek means simple. He davened like a regular person, with all his heart, the simplest person. He learned like the simplest person. He cried out to Hashem. He said Tillim like the simplest person. And this is what made him arrive at his Hamadrega. Because those who are Chachamim B'Yinehim, they consider themselves too great for these simple acts, those people are the ones who lose out tremendously. They cannot really arrive at a Hamadrega. Aharon said that he spoke to other tzaddikim, also testified to the fact that their madrega was due to the fact that they served Hashem like little children. Children of Hashem, we don't know, we have no special chachma, no special wisdom. We serve Hashem in purity, in simplicity, and in sincerity. Aharon said too, that if he would have known how at a high madrega he could reach, that it's possible to get to such a high madrega, the wonder, the marvel of being so high, this possibility exists, he would have served Hashem in one day. He would have done all the avodah that he did during a whole year. That's how he would have strived, put more effort into it. How can you put more effort than Arizal put? Which person could ever serve Hashem more than Arizal did? And yet Arizal said, I would have forced myself. I was going still further. So many hundreds of times more. I'd have made in one day what I did in a year's time, knowing what a person, what a human being can reach. This is also a statement by a very simple statement to stress the part of pshutus. We should be zecher to be such pshutim, simple people, serving Hashem, and with that simple, pure, truly pure emunah in the tzadik emes, in that Arizal who is the tzadik emes. Be close to the Arizal and draw our lifeline from there, which means chayim nitzchim, life here, life in Elam Haba, life forever. That's chus we will live to see, coming in Moshiach Tikuney Zohar, Amen.